Welcome to Small Bites, Sound Bites, a weekly segment of the Food for Thought podcast in which I share short responses to typical questions, myths, and misconceptions related to compassionate living. Thank you for your support of this podcast. You can go to joyfulvegan.com/donate. You can also find the donate button there, or you can just go right to patreon.com/Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Pick the level of support you can do and enjoy perks and being part of our support community. Today's episode is on humane meat, dairy, and eggs. I hear a lot of people say, I eat humane meat. I eat humanely raised meat. I eat humane dairy, humane eggs, which is better for me, better for the animals, better for the earth. I know I said that when I was eating meat, dairy, and eggs because none of us want to believe that we're contributing to harm against animals, against ourselves, against the earth. I have yet to meet a non-vegan who doesn't care about the treatment of animals bred and killed for human consumption. Nobody wants to support cruelty, and nobody wants to believe they're part of it. Even people who eat meat, obviously, we're all aware on some level that the experience is unpleasant for the animals, will say they object to unnecessary abuse and cruelty, as if there's ever necessary abuse or cruelty. Instead, most of us declare that we buy humane meat, free-range eggs, organic milk, perceiving ourselves as ethical consumers and these products as the final frontier in the fight against animal cruelty. I was once one of those people. But though we kill over 10 billion land animals every year, just to please our palates, rather than questioning the absurdity and the inherent cruelty of bringing animals into this world only to kill them. Instead, we try to absolve ourselves by making what we think are guilt-free choices, failing to recognize the paradoxical impossibility of humane slaughter and never really knowing what the whole experience is for an animal from cradle, domestication, to grave, our bodies. Though modern animal factories look nothing like what is idealized in children's books and advertisements or in our imaginations, there are also many misconceptions about the practices and principles of a humane operation. The unappetizing process of turning live animals into isolated body parts and ground up chunks of flesh begins at birth and ends in youth. Because the animals are babies when they are sent to slaughter, whether they are raised conventionally or in operations that are labeled humane, sustainable, natural, free-range, cage-free, heritage-bred, grass-fed, or organic. Relative to their natural lifespan, most of the animals are slaughtered when they're still babies. You can see a graphic at joyfulvegan.com to illustrate this, but I'll just give you some examples. If you look at male calves in the dairy industry, they're killed between 1 day old and 24 weeks old. The lifespan of a bull would be 15 to 20 years. Beef cattle, those who were raised, obviously brought into this world and raised and killed for beef, they're killed at 18 months. That is typical in the industry. As I said, bulls can live 15 to 20 years. Dairy cows, it's the same thing. They can live up to 20 years, but they're killed at around 4 or 5 years young. Chickens, for their flesh, are slaughtered between 5 and 7 weeks young. Their lifespan is up to 8 years. Rabbits are killed between 7 and 8 weeks young. Their lifespan is 7 to 8 years. Goats are killed between 12 and 20 weeks. Their lifespan is 12 to 14 years. And pigs are typically slaughtered at 6 months young, and they can live up to 12 years, and so on and so on. And these numbers are all from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. This isn't some vegan propaganda. This is like, you can find this all on the USDA's website. And they don't even include the millions of newborn male chicks who are killed upon birth by the egg hatcheries that even free-range egg farms buy their hens from. Now, in addition to manipulating birth and death, whether it's a large or small enterprise, we also manipulate animals' reproductive systems for human gain. In fact, it's at the heart of the animal agriculture industry, especially when we're talking about eggs and milk, for which the female's reproductive systems are exploited. Many animals endure the stressful, often painful, and humiliating process of sexual manipulation and artificial insemination, the keeping of male studs, the stimulation of the genitals, the collection of semen, the castration of males, the insemination into the female. None of these things are on people's minds when they sit down to dine, but it is exactly what our dollars pay for. And who do you think does this? And then, of course, there's the killing of the animals themselves. When we tell ourselves we are eating the flesh and secretions from humanely raised animals, we are leaving out a huge part of the equation, the slaughtering of an animal. And that is a bloody and violent act. Death doesn't come easy for those who want to live, and everyone wants to live, and everyone fights to live. And it's the very thing we turn away from because we know it's so unpleasant. And from an environmental perspective, by every measure, beef especially is the most environmentally taxing, followed by dairy, followed by pork, and followed by chicken. Not beans, not blueberries, not even almonds, which have become the scapegoat of people who are trying to justify eating beef because I guess vegans eat almonds. Everyone eats almonds. And yes, they're a water-intensive crop, but they don't come close to the environmental impacts, the negative environmental impacts of beef and chicken and pork and dairy. Whatever the barometer, whether it's greenhouse gas emissions or land use or soil depletion or water consumption or water contamination, meat and dairy have a significantly higher environmental impact than any plant food, whether it's almonds or apples or beans or blueberries. To be clear, if the world population shifted to a plant-based diet, the benefits would be incalculable. Incalculable. But I know it's not a realistic expectation. I've been doing this podcast for 18 years, and I know a portion of the people who've listened to this podcast have become vegan, but not close to the amount that we need to really have an impact. However, if only half the population, half the world population, went meat-free for only 2 days a week, we could cut greenhouse gas emissions, land use, and water use by a considerable amount. And the impacts would be noticeable. They would be calculable. They would be calculable in a very good way. So if you're listening to this podcast, if you're reading something, if you are willing to cut down your consumption of meat to only 4 days a week, is that reasonable? Can you cut out meat 2 or 3 days a week? You would be making a huge impact. From the animal standpoint, the ideal amount of meat to consume is zero. But whatever you do, if you're going in the direction of eating less meat, dairy, and eggs, you're doing a good thing. So pick a reason, any reason, whether it's health or environment or animals and ethics. Whatever you're concerned about, the solution is always going to be more plants, less meat, less dairy, and less eggs. The fundamental problems we keep running into do not arise merely from how we raise animals. I'm just going to get humanely raised, humanely slaughtered. The problems come from the fact that we eat animals, that we bring animals into this world, and keeping them alive during that time takes a lot of resources and a lot of land and creates a lot of waste. So it's that we raise animals. It's that we bring them into this world. It's that we eat animals that keeps creating all of these problems. Clearly, we can survive and, in fact, thrive on a plant-based diet. We do not need to kill animals to be healthy. And, in fact, animal fat and protein are linked with many diseases. We know this. We know this instinctively, and the medical research continues to support it. What does it say about us that when given the opportunity to prevent cruelty and to prevent violence, we choose to turn away because of tradition or habit or culture or convenience or pleasure? We're not finding the answers we're looking for because we're asking the wrong question. The movement toward humanely raised food animals simply assuages our guilt more than it actually reduces animal suffering. If we truly want our actions to reflect the compassion for animals we say we have, the answer is very simple. We can stop eating them. How can this possibly be considered anything but a rational and merciful response to a violent and vacuous ritual? Every animal born into this world for his or her flesh or eggs or milk only to be killed for human pleasure has the same desire for maternal comfort and protection, the same ability to feel pain, and the same impulse to live as any living creature. There's nothing humane about breeding animals only to kill them. And there's nothing humane about ending the life of a healthy animal in his or her youth. We only tell ourselves that so we can sleep at night and continue to see things as we want to, not as they really are. Thank you for listening, everyone. If you like what you heard, or if you don't, please drop me a line. I hope you share this podcast with others. If you did like what you heard, please leave a review. I hope you follow this podcast and consider supporting it at joyfulvegan.com. Until next time, for the animals, this is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thanks for listening.